Okay, welcome back to episode 3 of the Fantasy Chancer, the fantasy football show brought to you on the Upper Tier podcast. Today I have a familiar face on the show. It's Ted from Retrotainment. Ted, how are you doing, man?
How are you doing, bud? Obviously not the normal people you see on this channel. We're more used to Niall and Darren and Ian and the likes of them, but two people that have been on it a few times, but I don't think we've ever been on a show together.
No, we're making history tonight. I think we just discussed there off air, and if anyone can correct us on that, but we actually don't remember being ever on a show together.
Yeah, it'll be interesting now. This is something that I'm a big interest in now. The old fantasy football.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm like I don't really study it that much. I'm just like, right, I'm gonna try to get the most gold threat players in that I can, and then fuck the rest of the team. That's kind of like me.
yeah, I wouldn't say I study it, but I do. I always say to myself, I'm playing for a bit of fun, and then I enter a league with people, and it's a tenner in or whatever. It's not expensive, and it's a tenner out of the entire year, so it's not like I'm worried about it. I don't really care if I win or lose in that sense, but I say to myself, I won't take it too seriously, and then I end up, halfway through the week, I'm checking the team, and I'm like, oh, Salah's at a yellow now because so 50% injury. Will he play? Won't he play? And then I'm ending
Mm.
up, oh, will I take him out? And like the start of the season is always the worst for me because I end up tinkering with the team to no end, and then you take someone out and they have a great first week, and you're like, should have left them in now.
I traditionally play my wild card after week 1
Yeah, well, it's going to be
every year.
interesting. It's going to be interesting this year because you used to have like one wild card up until the international break or till like the middle of the season, till like January, Christmas time, and then you had a second one, and that's not the case this year now. So this year you have a wild card up until week 16, which is again it's Christmas,
Hmm.
um, but because we obviously have the World Cup during Christmas, they are resetting it to basically be like the start of the season. So
Yeah.
there's you have unlimited transfers during the World Cup. So obviously, if your player gets injured, it's a free transfer out, or someone has a really good World Cup, and you're like, well, now they might get picked up. And the January transfer window will be really interesting this year because you used to always see big signings after a World Cup. So it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see what happens there. And then obviously you have your next wild card that you normally had for the second half of the season. So you kind of have three wild cards this season. So using
Yes.
it early isn't going to be an issue, as much of an issue this time now.
Yeah, I think everyone is going to use it prior to week 16 with that rule in this year for sure.
Yeah, I would say most people will have used it by kind of week 7 or 8. So it's going to be kind of in quarters now. So like the first quarter of the season, where you've got the team that you started with your one change or two changes a week.
Yeah.
Then the second quarter after your wild card. Then the third quarter being after the World Cup, and then the fourth quarter after your last wild card. It's going to be a very interesting um, season in the fantasy football now.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to join, the code there is U2, like the shite band, E7, and KY, like the jelly, which we won't get into tonight. But what we will get into is your team. We're gonna start it off here now. And you've went for Aaron Ramsdale in goals. Obviously, he's going to be playing every game. Leno's going out the door now shortly to Fulham, and Arsenal's backup keepers are not very good this season. And plus, Ramsdale has been good. He's always going to pop up with a few saves, but you'll probably be wanting a few more clean sheets out of Arsenal to get the value out of him.
Yeah. So the thing with Ramsdale's quite well. All the keepers are relatively cheap, I suppose. There's a couple that are 5.5, and then Ramsdale's the next bracket down of 5 mil. So you kind of you can go with two keepers of 4.5, like one keeper of 4.5 and one of 4.
Mm-hmm.
But what tends to happen is they're playing for the weaker teams, so they don't tend to keep clean sheets. Now they sometimes get a lot of saves under their belt, which makes up for the lack of clean sheets, but Ramsdale, Arsenal have a decent start to this season in terms of who they're going to be playing against,
Yeah.
and defensively they've made some good signings defensively. Obviously, well, I don't know if he's going to be playing defense. I'm assuming he's going to be playing one of the wing back positions in Zinchenko, and then Salah's in there as well. Like Arsenal have a decent enough back line, and Ramsdale's a brilliant keeper. So I have a feeling there'll be a couple of clean sheets there for him because you have a few easy fixtures, which is why I said I'd go for him as my, relatively middle of the pack goalkeeper.
Yeah, and obviously then Trent Alexander-Arnold goes without saying. Obviously, he's very expensive for a defender, but kind of reap the rewards for him when you have him there in terms
Yeah,
of
well,
going forward.
he's a midfielder, really. Like Trent is a midfielder. He's not a defender. I'm not relying on Trent for clean sheets. Now, that being said, he gets a lot of clean sheets because you do have the likes of Van Dijk and Allison and the rest. Like their defensive line is quite good, so he does actually get quite a lot of clean sheets. But that's not what you have him in your team for. You have him in because of those crosses, corners, and he's basically just a midfielder that you get in your defense, and he's 7.5, which is very expensive for a defender, but for a midfielder, that's a relatively cheap midfielder.
Yeah,
And they've now signed. Obviously, they've signed Darwin Núñez, who's a big lad. So I can see a couple more crosses being whipped into him, which will only increase for Trent, who's been in the top players. Like I think he's been the top defensive points maker for the last couple of years, like 2 or 3
yeah.
years now. So I think you're mad not to have him in there. I know he's expensive as a defender, but I think you're mad not to have him there.
The next one's an interesting one now. Alicia, what's your thoughts there?
So obviously, like a new defender for United. I've watched him in pre-season, and he's been decent. He's a threat going forward, which is great. He's cheap as well. He's 4.5, so you've got a decent defender in there for 4.5, who does seem to pose an attacking threat. Seems to be quite good defensively as well, and I'll be hoping that United can keep a couple of clean sheets. He'll be battling for his position with Luke Shaw. And I think a lot of United players would say that, Luke Shaw has kind of not been great for parts of the season. So I can see Malacia getting his start and being ahead there. So I think he'll pick up a couple of clean sheets. And if he can get an assist or two, all the better. Obviously our third game of the season isn't great. It's against Liverpool, and I'll probably sub him off for that. But the first two games should be I suppose there's never handy games anymore for United, but I could expect to see. I wouldn't be surprised with a clean sheet sort of thing. So for 4.5, you put him in there, and that offsets the 7.5 you spent on Trent.
Yeah, and Ben Chilwell then obviously had a great season last year up until injury, and he's another one of those players that is very, very good going forward as well. So obviously that's why you have him in there.
Yeah, it was a debate between him and Reece James, to be honest. They're both the same price, and it'll be which one of them plays and which one of them doesn't really. So I've gone with Chilwell for the moment, but that could change. I could change that to Reece James.
Yeah, and then James Justin as well.
James Justin got injured about halfway through last season for Leicester, but he was very good for Leicester before that. He was really he was racking in points for assists and for goals, and he's a 4.5 as well. So another cheap defender to offset Chilwell, who's a 6 mil defender as well. So you've got two kind of the premium defenders, and then not completely the cheapest. Obviously 4 million is the cheapest, but two relatively cheap defenders there as well.
Yeah. Next one, Mo Salah, goes without saying, has to be a shoe in for everyone's team, or you're going to fall behind.
Yeah, I think you have to have Salah for the opening fixtures that Liverpool have. Even with United as their third game, he's still worth having for this. Your other option is realistically Son or KDB. I think you need to have one of them three in there, because if you don't have one of the big ones in the middle, and you then decide you need to get Salah in, it's going to cost you at least 2 subs. So you'll have to wait 2 weeks to get him, or you'll have to drop the 4 points to get him in. So you have to pick one, and Salah typically starts the seasons quite well. I think he scored last season. I think he scored in all of the first 8 or 9 games. He scored at least one goal. So
he had a great first half of the season as well. He kind of cooled off a little bit after the African nations, but he certainly started strong.
Yeah, and I think you're foolish not to have him in there. As good as Son is, and as good as KDB is, I think Salah is the biggest point threat in there.
Next two are interesting, both from United. Fred, who I think gets a lot of unjustified shit sometimes from Man United fans. He always puts a shift in him, similar to McTominay. He's always a solid, reliable player that actually tries for you. And the odd time he comes up with a nice goal as well.
Yeah, so if you watch the preseasons, he's been a lot more of an attacking presence in the preseason here. So he's been given that little bit more freedom to go forward, and being given that freedom seems to have done him the world of good, because he's obviously scored during the preseason, and his passing seems to be a lot better, which is one of the things that he got a lot of flack for, because well, it was terrible at times. But yeah, he's a cheap midfielder as well, 5.5, which is kind of why I've gone for him here. I went pretty heavy on my front line, so my front three are quite pricey ones, so I needed to take a hit somewhere else.
Yeah.
And Fred's one that I can sub out if I need to. Rashford is the biggest points drop I think I've ever seen in
Yeah,
fantasy
it's
football.
huge.
I think
6.5 now.
he's 6.5 now, and I think he was 9 or 10 last season, so he's dropped it around 3 mil, 3 to 4 mil. So I think you're
It's
mad not to have him in. Yes, he had a poor season. He had a very poor season last year. But I think he's played well in the preseason. If this is the way we're going to play under Ten Hag, I think you'll see a lot of them. Obviously, there's talk about whether Ronaldo's going to stay with United or go. I think it's kind of irrelevant in the sense of in relation to Rashford. I think he's going to be playing Rashford no matter what, and then Elanga will be subbed on because we now have 5 subs a game. So I don't think you'll get Elanga starting, and even if Elanga does start, I don't think he'll be finishing the game. It'll be subbed on for Rashford or subbed off for Rashford.
yeah,
And for 6.5, I think he could come very good, and it's a risk, yes, because he could end up having another bad season. But for the risk of 6.5, and if he comes out and has a really good season, you've got a nice cheap player, and he'll go up in price if he scores in the first 2 or 3 games.
yeah,
You could see him jump to 7 or 8 million, and if it jumps to that price, I could either keep him or I could sell him and use that money to then get like a KDB or something in, and then potentially have both Salah and Son, or Salah and KDB. So I think he's worth the risk to take at this early point in the season.
yeah. It's going to be a massive season for him. Massive. Right, the front three. Haaland to start with, anyway. I have Haaland in my team as well, and my only concern was last season at Dortmund there was a couple of injury concerns near the end.
Yeah,
That's
and he
my only
didn't play the
concern with
first.
him because I think he will get goals.
Yeah, he didn't play the first game of the preseason either because they felt he had a bit of a niggling injury. He obviously played the second and scored.
Yeah,
He is a risk for that because he does seem to carry knocks quite a bit, and he's coming into a more physical league, so he could be a risk. The other option here is obviously Kane, who
yeah, same price.
I know as an Arsenal fan, you probably don't want to hear too much praise for Kane, but in terms of fantasy football and goal
Oh,
scoring,
he's in my team.
he's been brilliant for the preseason. Him and Son are still tearing it up in the preseason. And as much as people can say preseason doesn't matter, and yes, the results don't particularly matter, and it is a chance for managers to try out new things. It does give you an indication of where a player is at in terms of mentally and physically, and Kane is right up there. So it's a debate between having one of those two: Kane, the proven Premier League player, the proven goal scorer, or take the risk with Haaland. For me, I don't think Kane's going to go up in price. And my worry is if I don't have Haaland in at the very start and he bags 2 or 3 in his first game and then a 2 or 3 in his second, that I then won't be able to afford him.
Yeah,
So I want to get him in now so that just in case he has because even that increase of 0.2 or 0.3 million, that could make all the difference to whether I can afford him or not. So my decision was to have him in now. And then if I need to, I can switch to Kane. And if he picks up an injury, as you said,
yeah,
Kane's the same price. So get him out and get Kane in, and no issue.
yeah. Darwin Nuez. obviously he was getting a lot of slack there during the preseason, but then he bagged 4 goals the other day. He seems to be a popular one in fantasy football this year as well, and he seems to going to be like. It'll be interesting to see what way he plays within that Liverpool front three, but he seems to be the type of player that's going to be in and around the box, maybe for tap-ins and stuff like that, which is not something we see a lot at Liverpool. We see a lot of kind of quality goals and stuff like that from them.
Yeah, we do, but having that scrappy fox in the box can always work because it now means, if Salah takes a slightly riskier shot than the one he would have taken, it's at a tighter angle or whatever, he can not worry so much about if a Liverpool player is going to be there to clean it up. It also, he's a tall guy, a big guy, so like you can have crosses coming in from Trent and Robbo on each side. And he's not bad with the ball at his feet either. So he's a very technically gifted player. Might not hit the ground running extraordinarily well, like even with 4 goals in one game in preseason, that doesn't it doesn't necessarily mean he's going to bag 4 in his first game either. He could go a game or 2 or 3 without scoring. But he's relatively expensive. He's not the top, obviously Kane and Haaland price. He's 9 million. So if he doesn't do well and I sell him, I have 9 million there to play with to take another striker, which, you might end up using to get someone relatively cheaper. Who's having a good start to the season, like Mitrovic or something, for example.
Or Callum Wilson, maybe if he hits the ground running a few goals as well.
Yeah, some of those players might come in and hit the ground running and you go, right, I'll get them in because Darwin's not hit the ground here. And I think he will have a very good season, regardless if he starts the season strong or not. I think he will, by the end of the season, have picked up a lot of goals. But obviously, fantasy football doesn't take into account what he might do in the future of the season. Like if he ends the season with 30 goals, but he hasn't scored any goals in the first 5 games of the season, it's no benefit to you to have had him for those 5 weeks. You'd have been better off with Callum Wilson or something for 5 weeks and then sub him out and get Darwin in.
Yeah, the next one then, Jesus. Criminally cheap, I think, this year for someone that's probably going to be playing. And I said to the boys, I can't see him not playing every game. I think he's the first name. He's the only striker we really have. I don't think Eddie Nketiah is not really at that level yet. Maybe give him another couple of seasons. But this guy has to play every game and will play every game.
Yeah, as I said, I don't look into this, look into stuff too much, but me and the lads were going to, like, we always do a bit of a bet on the top goal scorer in the Premier League, but with the caveat that you're not allowed to pick the big names. So you're not allowed to pick Salah's, Haaland's, things like that. So they're kind of meant to be smaller ones. And one of the lads tried to sneakily take Jesus in for it. And I went and looked it up and I said, there's no chance you're getting him. He's the most picked player in fantasy football. What does that matter? I'll tell you why it matters. There's a reason he's the most fucking picked player. He's picked because everybody thinks he's going to start bagging the goals in here. And I think he will as well, to be honest. I think
he's 20 to 1. He's 20 to 1 to be top goal scorer. I said it to a couple of guys, Niall and them. They weren't really feeling the bet, but I'm certainly going to stick 20 quid on it.
Yeah, I don't know if he'll be the top goal scorer, but I think the way Arsenal play and the way he does a lot of running off the ball. You've obviously got Saka, Smith Rowe, Martinelli, who are all great as well. Odegaard as well. I think the way he plays is going to suit Arsenal quite a lot. And I can easily see him picking up, a lot of goals here. So I think for a cheap enough forward, you'd be mad not to have him in your team. And I think most people, you had him in yours, and I think Darren had him in his as well.
Yeah,
I'd be surprised to see anyone not using him in their team, to be honest.
Yeah, particularly at the price. Sub goalkeeper Willy Caballero. That's just the case of having the cheap goalkeeper there.
Yeah, 4 mil keeper. Yeah.
Yeah, Nico Williams. Obviously, that's going to be an interesting one now because he's going to be playing football, and I reckon he's not obviously gone to Forest to sit on the bench either. So is he 4 or 4.5?
He's 4, which is why I have him in there.
Yeah, I have him as well.
He's one of the cheapest defenders, and as you said, he's gone to Forest, and he hasn't gone there to sit on the bench. He'll be playing week in, week out.
Yeah, and Wilson.
Wilson would be playing at the moment. He'd probably be in ahead of Fred if it wasn't for his first game of the season being Liverpool.
Yeah,
Obviously, Mitrovic is the big goal scorer for them in the championship, but the big assists were mainly from Wilson. That could be switched out for, say, Pereira, who is now signed to them, which would also be a decent signing, I think, but a relatively cheap midfielder, which then gave me the money to be able to get Haaland and Darwin and Jesus up front. Like,
yeah, I went for Pereira myself because of the same reason as Nico Williams, like guaranteed
yeah,
game time. And I think there's a player in there. I only seen little glimpses of him at Man United, but I think there's something there for him maybe this season.
it's time for him to prove himself now. He never really got much of a chance at United in the Premier League. We played him in pre-season and he never overly impressed, and then he'd get loaned out. This is his time to show if he would have made it in the Premier League, I suppose.
And then the last player you have there is Bailey from Villa.
Yeah, I think a quality player, lightning quick, a lot of confidence in himself, and if you listen to the interviews after the game against United and even other interviews after games, Steven Gerrard speaks very, very highly of him. So for someone who's 5 million as a midfielder, I just think it's again one of those cheap midfielders that may or may not bag you points every week. I don't think he'll play every game either. I think he'll be subbed on and off in most games with 5 subs per team. So that's why he's on the bench. But I do think he's a decent midfielder to have in there, especially at that price range. Some people go and use the price range more on the midfield because obviously you get an extra point per goal, and if your team keeps a clean sheet, the midfielders get a bonus point for that. But I've gone with kind of stacking up the forward line and the defensive line a bit more than the midfield, in hoping that those clean sheets and the goals that the guys will get will make up for my midfielders maybe not making as many points.
Do you think you will tinker with it before next Friday?
Well,
I
as
know
I
I'm going
said,
to be looking around this week anyway, just to make sure, and then just
yeah,
the whole transfer window thing as well.
yeah, as I said, Chilwell could be switched for James very quickly. Obviously, I keep an eye on. I don't watch the preseason games for Chelsea, but I watch the highlights to kind of keep an eye on them. So
Yeah,
just see how they're doing. So that could change, and then obviously, depending on what signings people make, that could all change. Like obviously, currently Rafinha is not an option because he's playing for Barcelona. But he's not playing for Barcelona, and if Barcelona don't sell Frankie de Jong, he won't be playing for Barcelona. So if that's the
Messi.
case, well, like if even like say Rafinha, if he ends up not playing for Barcelona, like he's not going to sit on the bench for a year not playing football. So they'll probably release him from that contract, and he'll go find another team. And if they don't sell Frankie de Jong, I don't think they can register
Lewandowski, yeah.
Lewandowski. And again, there's a player that is definitely not going to sit on the bench for a year because Lewa's not, he's not as young as Rafinha either. He needs,
Yeah.
and like I'd say he's gunning to try and get that golden boot, or sorry, not the golden boot, the Ballon d'Or. Obviously he missed out on it the last 2 years. Rightly this year, probably wrongly the year before, to be honest. But he'll be gunning for that, and if he can't play in Barcelona, again, he might just walk from that contract, and now he's a free agent. And I think there'd be a lot of Premier League teams in looking at him if he became a free agent. So I'm not saying that will happen, but any signings could change my team completely. Yeah, like if 2 or 3 really good signings came in, yeah, I could end up dropping any of those players. I'm not like the only ones I think I'm sold on are Trent, Salah, and Haaland at the moment, really.
Yeah, it's such a shame that the window just doesn't just fucking close when the season starts. Like,
It
that's
did
my
last
opinion
year.
on it.
It
Yeah,
did last year, which was really good. And I would prefer if they did that, but I suppose that's what we have the wild card for.
yeah, yeah. Ted, absolute pleasure to have you on today, man. We'll be talking to you, no doubt, throughout the year. The way we're going to do these videos is I'm going to get one person on every week, and then we're not going to be revealing our teams, obviously, all year round. This is just for the start. But say the first game is next Friday, 8 o'clock kickoff. So 7 p.m. the teams come out. So 7 p.m. next Friday will be when the next video comes out, 1 hour before it. So everyone's teams get released at the same time, and that's the way we're going to do it. So pleasure to have you on today, man. And look, Retrotainment, just talk to us about it. What's going on there?
Yeah, so obviously that's my show over on Retrotainment on YouTube and everything like that. I do it with Greg and usually Carl Sherlock. He's just had his first child, so Carl King Woe is subbing in for him at the moment. And yeah, basically the premise of it is we take older films, so not always so old. Some of them would be from like 2000, 2002, and then we recast them using modern actors. And it's in a title kind of fight 1v1, and then the other person's the judge, and then the loser becomes the judge. The judge steps in, and you kind of battle it out, and you get to see some fairly heated arguments of like when someone disagrees with your pick, you're kind of like, well, hang on now. I think my pick's way better than his. I think most of the arguments are from me, to be honest. I think the rest of the lads just accept it when their pick isn't made, but I don't. I believe in my picks, and I'll argue for them tooth and nail.
Is there any movies that you have coming up that you want to talk about? When is the recast for the Human Centipede, for example?
Oh well, that's still only relatively recent, so we couldn't recast that yet. We tried to make it so it's about 15 plus years older before we start recasting it. So another few years for the Human Centipede, but I'm sure we'll recast that eventually.
I'll go on that show for you.
Okay, well, it'll be tough to recast that one because not only do you have to think, well, who's going to want to be in that film, let alone who's actually going to be in it. No, our next episode comes out tomorrow at 6 p.m., obviously Irish time, and the film we're doing is Braveheart.
Excellent.
Going into this one, I am the current champion, and I am facing off against Greg this week with Carl King Woe as our judge. So Braveheart, obviously quite a long film, but we recast. I think we went with 9 for this one. Okay. Obviously there's other people that could have been recast, but we felt we're not recasting the whole, like every actor. We just kind of picked the top ones. So nine cast members that we have to recast. So it's tough to recast the likes of William Wallace, because obviously we're so used to it, like it was done so well and things like that. So it's a pre-recorded show, and it's interesting. We always love to see people kind of come in and let us know what they think. Like, I don't think that was that. They might think my pick was terrible. They might think Greg's was, or Carl might pick me or Greg, and then they might disagree with him. So it's an interesting one to. And it's a lot easier. Carl has learned this now as he's had to step in and actually do it. It's a lot easier to sit back and watch and be like, yeah, I think that's a great choice, than when you have to sit down at home and start doing it yourself and writing them out and then go in and someone's like, no, that pick is dog shit, lads. So you're not going to win with that one. So it's always a lot easier. We might end up getting you in for one eventually. We do guest episodes every once in a while. So like, we've had Ian versus Carl previously. Obviously, they have On the Slab with Greg, so they did a horror film. So we get guests in every once in a while. Might get you in for one, and we'll have to find somebody for you to go up against. But then you can see what it's like to actually have to sit down and do it yourself. It's a lot harder when there's something on the line. Well, I mean, there's nothing on the line, but except pride.
Personal pride is on the line, and that's more important.
Yeah, and if you've pride in yourself, it's important to keep it,
Yeah, exactly. Before we wrap up, then, the code is U2E7KY. We're only 1 week away now. Really looking forward to it, and best of luck to both our teams this year. We underachieved last year. Let's see what happens this year.
Yeah, good luck to my team, not yours, though.
Thank you very much, Ted.
Cheers.